We're in for a wild night.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 98 of Born to be Wild, a Wild exclusive Hearthstone podcast where we have fun hanging out with friends, talking about the Wild format of Hearthstone and spotlighting members of the Wild community. I'm your host, as always, Nate Wolf. It is great to be back on a beautiful evening here in Portland, Oregon, joined by two of my favorite people. Before I introduce them, I just want to say hello, everybody. We have a great show lined up for you tonight. Please, those of you who are here in chat, thank you so much for joining us. Those of you who are watching, please stick around for after the show because we've got the finals of our listener series match, and I just want to throw that out there at the beginning of this, and we'll talk about it later throughout the show. But it's just going to be an awesome, crazy, cool night tonight. I know we kind of got away from talking about our weeks a little bit, but I just wanted to briefly interject. I did hit Legend over the past week. It was great. I was very happy to do that. I had a work meeting that I was dreading, and I knew, like, if I try to sleep, I'm not going to sleep anyways. And so I'll just play Hearthstone all night instead. And so I played until 2 a.m. and hit Legend, and that was great. I was
2 a.m.
Yeah, well, I don't know,
It's funny because of time zone.
Yeah.
Because of time zones, Nate's like, "Oh, I hit Legend," and then my waking up was only different by 2 hours.
Right? Yeah. So I was playing a lot of the updated quest line Hunter, and it was like okay. It was so. Like, I enjoy it, but it's not. I don't feel like it's nearly as strong as it was. And I've been playing it in standard as well. And I feel like it's a lot. I don't know, it's so similar between the two. But anyways, it was like hit and miss, and I'm like, you know what? Forget this. It's not working for me. I'm gonna switch back to Freeze Shaman, and then I went like, 9-1 or 10-1 to Legend, and I just like sailed through, and it was like the definition of like Tech W. The deck. I just pulled it from the Tempo Storm Wild Meta Snapshot, but it had it runs Kobold Sticky Fingers, and it runs a Hecklebot.
Oh,
and
boy.
it's like the definition of like crazy tech cards. But there's so many cards, like combo decks right now between Mechathune and all the crazy Druid shenanigans that, like, I was stealing the Rune Mythal Rod. I was stealing the
Twig of the World Tree.
Twig of the World Tree, and the orb that lets you scry a card, whatever it's called.
Sphere of Sapience.
Sphere of Sapience, and stealing Ankars. I was like, hey, you know what? This is pretty good, actually. And Hecklebot, like, it's basically an extra dirty rat. It's like, hey, this is pretty good, actually. I was surprisingly good. So anyways, I don't want to, I don't want to spend too much time on it tonight, but that's kind of like my comfort deck, and it sees different iterations, but the core is the same. If anybody's interested in that deck, like, I'd be happy to do like a write-up or a video or whatever it is. For me, it feels kind of self-explanatory. Like, you play the cards, it's mostly disruption, and you just infuriate your opponent until they concede, and it's hilarious when Pirate Warriors board lock themselves and they can't play their quest reward. It's really funny. Anyways, but if anyone's interested in that, let me know either in chat or on Discord or whatever. I'd be happy to do like a write-up or something. But the deck was super fun and worked really well for me. Okay. Yes. So I am joined, of course, by two of my favorite people. Sorry for the late introduction, but Hydra, it is great to see you. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing awesome, coming at y'all from the greater Vancouver area. And I'm so glad that the week is over because I am off work all of next week. And this is like the perfect kickoff to start my vacation. It's more of a staycation. We're not actually really going too far. We've got family that's somewhat close in the area, so we'll be doing things, going to their places. They'll be coming here and whatnot. But I'm very excited because work has been quite hectic, and it's going to get even more hectic pretty soon. So One of my main partners that I work with is going on paternity leave coming up, and it's going to really stink. Kind of, sort of being alone. He's like my main partner. Right?
Sorry.
You couldn't help yourself. Oh, that's great. But yeah, so I'm just super excited because we're going to have a great show tonight. We're going to talk about some Hearthstone, and I have the next, I guess, 9 days of not working. So that's pretty awesome in itself.
Nice.
And, yeah.
Hooray! Very cool. Well, I'm excited for you. That's awesome. And we are also joined, of course, by our very own Electric Sheep City. Welcome back. It is always great to see you. How are you?
Meowdy friend, always great to see you too. And I am doing fantastic. So Meowdy, of course, from Southeast Texas, around here for about another month and a half-ish. It's been pretty busy and exciting here in the city of Electric Sheep as well. Put the house on the market, sold the house. I mean, well, it's pending, but agreed to the offer and had the inspection and agreed to the follow-ups and did all those things.
Delightful.
So, yeah. So I didn't get to play as much Horizon as I was hoping to, which is, kind of sad. But I did hit Wild Legend myself as well with Aggro Druid yet again.
Nice.
I think it was
deck?
technically, I think it was the same day that Nate did, but Nate really did it the night
It
before.
was kind of the night before because it was but still.
Right. A matter of hours later. It was so funny because some people were looking at the house, and so I had to go drive elsewhere with my pup. And because whenever people tour the house, that's the thing that you do is you get out of there, and same with the animal. And so she and I were I actually hit Legend in the car, in the driver's seat of the car.
Hard thing in driving?
I was not driving myself. I was not pulling a just a guy in the podcast.
Was your dog driving?
She wasn't driving either. Yeah, we were parked just killing time, and I was just slinging cards, doing the thing, and got there with my favorite deck.
Nice.
So yeah, exciting week. Did the Legend thing, did the house selling thing. Ready to move and ready to just cap off this exciting week talking about the game that we love with two of my favorite people. So, without further ado, for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome aboard. I will briefly explain how the show works. So we record this podcast live every Friday evening at twitch.tv/BornToBeWildHS. And the video version of this podcast is then posted to YouTube shortly thereafter. Audio versions are also distributed to all of the podcast apps. So however you're watching or listening or absorbing via osmosis this podcast today, thank you. Yes, you.
Thank you, friends. I wanted to play the Guff I'll Miss You, but I need to get a Guff, like a friend one. That would be so nice.
That would be nice.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for being here and listening to our show. Before we get started, just a couple quick housekeeping things. As always, thank you so much to Shokunin and to the other patrons of our show. Your support means the world to us, and we appreciate it very much. If you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, comment on any of our videos on YouTube, just because that helps with the YouTube algorithms, helps other people to find us, and that is always nice. Another simple way to support the show is to leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, or your podcast platform of choice. Again, it just helps other people find us. If you're watching live on Twitch, we do have some really cool emotes that you can unlock by subscribing to the channel, which is free. If you have Amazon Prime, you can use your Prime sub. And we've got some really fun emotes, some more kind of in the works. Finally, if you are interested in supporting the show financially, we do have a Patreon for as little as $1 a month, which you can find the link to on our website. Finally, if you would like to interact with us personally, please join our Discord. If you're not familiar with Discord, it is a, I don't know what you would call it, but essentially it's, it's kind of like an online social media group of people. anyways, we've made so many amazing friends in this community from all across the whole world, and we talk about Hearthstone and real life, and share memes and deck lists and all that fun stuff, and it's a lot of fun. We do some co-op and all that other jazz. So yeah, all of this stuff and more can be found on our website, which is borntobewildhs.com. We'd love to interact with you. And then one final thing before we get into tonight's show, I did want to share with everybody. So tonight's episode is 98. So we were like 2 episodes away from just a big milestone. And I wanted to share something that we were thinking about doing. If anyone listening to the show, watching the show is interested in sharing a message with us, if you go to the podcast website, it's anchor.fm, anchor.fm/borntobewildhs. There's this link right here that says message on it. And you click this and you can record yourself saying something to us that then we can play on the show. And so that would be super cool. So you just go to, again, anchor.fm/borntobewildhs. You click on this button right here that says message. And nice try, but you can't send yourself a voice message. Oh, right, thanks. But you can send us one. And so if that's something that you're interested in, we'd love to hear it. And I think that'd be a blast. I'll put the link in the show notes. But that's something that we would love. I think it'd be really fun, and should have an awesome time in a couple weeks. Anyways, talking about or getting into the main topic of tonight, a couple of things. We're going to be talking about the core set primarily and our thoughts about the rotation. But I wanted to give a quick shout out to our friends over at the Coin Concede podcast. And on last week's show, if you caught it, they had a game director, Ben Lee, on the show as an interview, which was super cool. Ben Lee announced that he was no longer the game director of Hearthstone. Surprise. And that there was an interim at the time, and then I think yesterday found out that Ixar is our new current interim game director of Hearthstone. So like, whoa, okay, cool. It's super cool. He did an AMA earlier today, and I asked if he was going to change his name to Ben, and did not respond. But anyways, during that interview, though, they were asking questions about the core set rotation, asking if, he dropped any clues or hints or whatever. And of course, not really. But one of the things that he mentioned was that we would see some quote unquote familiar faces when the core set, when the new core set comes out, presumably in April with the whole, set rotation where some of the standard sets rotate to wild, and this Year of the Griffin core set will presumably rotate to wild, though I guess we don't know yet. But there will be a new core set, right? So they've announced that there's a new core set each year, and so we were kind of chatting about, how does that impact wild? And well, all a bunch of these cards are old cards we can play in wild anyways, but then they created some new ones, and we're kind of joking about like, hey, what card do they pull from wild that would just totally ruin standard and we could all laugh about? But we have a couple more serious topics, and shout out and thank you to Schmoopy Daddy, who I believe was the one who suggested this topic, I think. Anyways, so the couple things we're going to be talking about tonight were, number one, cards that are currently in wild that we think might make it into the core set, and number two, decks, existing decks that we would like to see evolving from new cards created for the upcoming core set. And so for each of these, we're going to be picking 3 and chatting about them a little bit, and that's kind of what we're talking about tonight. And so I guess I'll get started here first. And so first what we're talking about is cards that are currently in wild that we think may be coming to standard. And so my first pick here, and again, these are like, this is wild speculation. You see what I did there? So my anyways, hooray. My first pick is Mad Scientist. And so here's my thought. right? That we saw some new secret support lately in standard, primarily with Hunter, but there are some rogue secrets that like nobody's really played rogue secrets all that much. And even then, so like some new Hunter secrets, some new mage stuff. And my thought was, you could use this with a new Tavish hero or whatever else. Mage could be revamped. And I was looking primarily at cards from Nax Ramus because it was the first expansions, or I guess adventure rather, from way back when. And when you're looking at a standard audience, who most of which don't play Wild, I doubt that many of them have ever seen this card or interacted with this card. Like, it's so old, but it has synergy with the new stuff. Like, this could be fun. And I was looking specifically at neutral because you could use it across multiple classes. And so I thought, hey, this is a solid card. And we saw this played in Wild so much for such a long time, and it's kind of died out a little bit, but it's still around. And so this was my first pick. Yeah, it's maybe a little far-fetched, but maybe. My next one, I feel like maybe has a better chance. I don't know. When I think of Ben saying that we may see some familiar faces, my next pick is Ragnaros the Fire Lord. And so here's why. Here's why. Again, I try to have rationale for these choices. And so here is the thought process. Not only is Rag like classic Hearthstone, like, I mean, not only is it a classic set, but like this is a classic character, well-known character. But Rag has maintained a presence in Hearthstone proper throughout the past year, as a bartender, in Battlegrounds, as a shaman hero portrait, and then this year he got the diamond card makeover. And so the thought was like, well, he kind of been hanging out all year, like, so even for players who may be not super familiar, that at the same time, maybe they were introduced to Ragnaros a little bit, and so I'm not sure. It would be interesting, and so that's my second pick, and then my final pick here, and I think this one is a long shot, but my guess on this last one is Nerubar Weblord.
Ooh.
Okay, this is also from Nax Ramus. Yeah, but here's my rationale for it, right? When they were talking about, the next sets or the sets over the next year, they had mentioned a couple of things as like hints. They had said that like over this past year, they did like a continual storyline that spanned the entire year, and they're going to kind of go 1 year off, 1 year on this. And so this coming year, it's going to be like 3 separate unique sets, and they're not going to tell a year-long story. The other thing that they mentioned was that they were going to put the emphasis on being more like minion/board based and try to slow things down a little bit, as opposed to being more spell heavy or combo heavy. And so, initially I was thinking like, hey, are there cards that support quest lines? But then I thought, I think they're going to try to like forget that they introduce the quest lines to us, because they're, as opposed to providing more support. All right, we're going to go more minion/board based instead. And so when I looked at and then we see the decks in standard right now where, I mean, maybe not as popular as it was not too long ago, but decks like Aggro Druid or whatever that have, token based or whatever. We see this in Wild quite a bit, in even Warlock and even Paladin and Aggro Druid, Tax Paladin, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because this is solid disruption, but it's disruption. It's minion-based disruption as opposed to spell-based disruption. And as somebody who's been playing Free Shaman for the last few months, like, I hate this card. This card, like, it's like you have to kill it. Like, it ruins my day. you have to kill. Like, it's not a threat. It ruins all of your turns, and I don't know. It just seems solid to me. So it's disruption, but it's not mana disruption. And again, the same rationale with Mad Scientist, because this is from Nax. It's so old that newer players have probably, or standard predominant players have probably never seen this card before.
Even in Wild, we didn't see it a lot until it was being Call to Arms out.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I think another kind of TS and one thing that we use Nerubar Weblord for a lot in Wild that I think Standard will probably use to achieve their board-based, more board-based strategies. If you play Nerubar Weblord, then all of a sudden their questline reward costs 2 more. And so you can, just like we do in Wild, you can use that whenever you anticipate the quest reward to come down, and boom, you've delayed that, and then you're able to actually push for lethal there, or control with the board a lot more. So I think at the very beginning of this, you said that is something that you think is more of a long shot. I think Nerubar Weblord is kind of. I think the other two are pretty solid. I think Rag's almost a guarantee, but I think Nerubar Weblord is kind of a lock too. Truthfully,
I'd be curious. I mean, I guess we'll see. I think the announcement is lined up for this coming Tuesday. Right? I think next week anyways, we should know more information about, what do they say? What's next for Hearthstone, core set rotation, and the next expansion, whatever else, I think by next week. And so I imagine we'll be talking about that on next week's show. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious. I think for the core set as a whole, they will probably keep, 2/3 of it or something. I imagine a lot of it stays the same, but I imagine a handful of it will rotate out. Particularly the cards that were created specifically for it, but maybe not. I mean, really, who knows? And I see people in chat talking about stuff, but I haven't read anything yet, and so I'm sure we'll have the whole scoop next week on what stays and what goes and what we have to craft and what we get to keep. And regardless of what we've seen in tweets or whatever, I have yet to see like a formal announcement from Blizzard, so I guess we'll see. Anyways, any other thoughts on these two? Otherwise, I'll move on to Hydra's picks.
I mean, I think that Rag is probably a shoo-in. It's it's slow, but it's classic. And they made it diamond, right? Like I don't see why they would do that if they weren't planning on bringing it back. Like that seems to be a little bit of a hint.
Well, I mean, they were trying to push classic mode pretty hard, but like I don't think that there's that many people playing it. Every once in a while I see people hit legend and they come in like double digits. And so it's like, oh, yeah, I mean it is what it is, but like I don't know. I mean, the other piece is it's slow and they're trying to slow things down and it's board based. Like it checks all the boxes. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but like I don't know.
And Mad Scientist, I think, is a nice choice by you as well. Just the neutral secret support can do so many things, especially if for some reason we end up seeing secrets in other classes. Who knows?
Hey.
Yeah, and hey, it won't be able to pull Oh My Yogg out anymore, which I think is one thing that they may have, kept it, Mad Scientist from being in the Year of the Griffin core set. I think once that rotates, then Mad Scientist in the core set honestly makes a lot of sense there too.
Yeah. All right. Let me move over to Hydra. What is your first pick for a card from Wild to potentially rotate into the standard core set?
So speaking of board-based decks, I chose as my first pick Sylvanas Windrunner. Now, this card, like Ragnaros, was in a lot of decks back in the day, hence why it was rotated as part of the Hall of Fame, I believe at the same time as Rag. Now, this direction, if they are going to be doing board-based decks, is a perfect shoe-in, because when you play Sylvanas onto a board where your opponent has a board, maybe you have a board as well, and you can make your trades, you get to decide what dies first, you pass the turn over, now it's their turn, and this is kind of what separates, like a better player from a newer player. You really have to make your decisions. Mistakes were made many times playing this card. So I think it's a really good shoe-in, to be honest, just because it takes thought while playing it. It's board-based, and you can definitely screw up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so, no, that's one that I think would really, really fit in nicely with the board-based decks. Now, my second pick, I don't think is as likely as Sylvanas. I think it's more of a selfish pick, but it's something that would.
Sorry.
Yeah, there we go. Deathstalker Rexar I picked for my second card because I loved that Deathstalker Rexar could go in multiple different styles of decks. It can go into more of a controlling deck. It can go as your aggro decks where you've kind of run out of steam. You're going in the long game. I've played games where I'm going against some sort of bigger deck, a control deck, and Deathstalker Rexar, you keep making those threats, and you get to choose. Like, granted, you don't get to choose exactly what you want, but you get some pretty good options, right? With like the bloat bat exploding, poisonous, all this stuff, right? Like you can get the board clear if you're falling behind in like an aggro mirror or something like that. It's just a really cool way for Hunter to play. Like, I feel like it's just a solid, not just hero, but thing to build your deck around in Hunter. And right now in Standard, from what I know, there's a lot of Face Hunter going on right now, and that's kind of your plan. You sort of top off with those the rhinos that go Face, and that's it. You brick if you don't get to make it, right. Deathstalker Rexar fits right in as alternate win con. You can go the long game. Maybe people in Standard won't like that. I don't know.
I love it as an alternate win con, right? I found myself asking so many times, like, why is this card in the deck? It doesn't make sense. And it's like, oh no, this is in case like plan A fails. This is our plan B.
It's the one card that is plan B all in itself because it generates so many other cards. And yeah, you've exhausted your resources like Hydra was intimating. Boom, there it is. Break glass in case of emergency.
Yeah, and I mean, these Death Knights are now, what year was that? Like 2017? Something like that? 2018? Like, there's a lot of players that haven't actually got to use them. So I think this would be really cool for new players to be able to use. So that's my pick for my second one. Now,
Let me interject real quick since you're still on this one. I love the idea. I remember when they were talking about how long they were going to support it or whatever. And I remember when they said that they were not going to be adding new beasts to the pool. And then they said, you know what? Okay, we've heard you. We'll add the new beasts to the pool in Wild. And that was cool. The only, and so when I was doing my choices, I thought about adding the Lich King because it felt like solid, well-known character. And then I was like, oh, well, they would be bringing back like Death Knight cards. And I was like, how cool would that be if they brought back Death Knight cards? I'm like, I don't know. I love when they make hero cards and I want them to do this. It's just, I don't know that they'll bring back Death Knight cards, but I hope you're right. I mean, God, that would be so cool.
Yeah, so I selected, how part of my thought process was at first they released Death Knight cards, like every class gets one, right? But then they started doing one or two classes at a time getting a hero instead, which is why I thought that it would be neat if they only brought back one, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just dumping them all back into Standard again, like, okay, which class could use the support, right? Like,
not only that, but the push towards that more board based. Not all the Death Knights are revolving around or pushing that board based strategy. Deathstalker Rexar is. So I think that fits in with the stated goal as well. So to kind of and that, it's a perfect one to bring back to push the strategies that they're hoping to encourage.
I like it.
Yeah, so fingers crossed. I mean, I don't play Standard all the time, but I think it would be really cool for Standard players to experience this card in all its wonderful glory.
Yeah. Well, and actually, you know what? Now that you bring that up, so the way that it works right now, right, is that it's looking at the beast pool in Wild, and it would see, it would be unique in Standard because it would be looking at a different card pool of beasts to pull from, which would be really interesting. God, I'd really like that idea. I hope they do it. I really hope they do it.
And the fact that Trampling Rhino is rotating may actually be one reason that you could actually introduce Deathstalker XR, because that's not in the pool.
Yeah, having that card in the pool would be crazy. Jeez. Yeah. Okay. All right. What's your third choice?
Okay, so my third choice comes from like a really like a place where I didn't think this card ever should have left Standard. So my third choice is Whizbang the Wonderful. Now, when this card came out, it was so cool because it was every class had 3 different options, I believe, for decks that it could pull from. And so all you needed was this one legendary, and you could play 3 different decks from all the different classes. So you had this massive pool that it could pull from, and the decks were playable. They weren't all, tier 1 decks, but they were playable decks. And so I crafted this in gold the second I saw that it was announced, right?
Me too.
Because I'm like, I want 20 golden decks or however many there are.
Yeah.
Like that sounds like value, right? So, and you could have it as a newer player with a smaller collection. You could just jam this all day, and you can learn different archetypes that you're never going to play, and you're sort of forced to learn the deck that it gives you. Also, alternatively, you could have a full collection, whatever, and you're memeing around and say, hey, this month I'm going to get to Legend on Whizbang. Right? Make a challenge
but
first.
Yeah, people would do that too, and it's crazy. Their deck builder, Ixar was talking about in the AMA earlier today. Someone was asking what he was playing on ladder in Standard that was fun or something, and he goes, hey, I just dropped in. There was some mage spell that I wanted to play, some big mage spell that I wanted to play, and so I dropped that in and hit autocomplete. And then I started winning with it, and it was just so much fun that that's all I've been playing for, the month. And I like that. I like their deck builder is pretty good, actually. It's come a long way. And so, yeah, I mean, having their deck recipes, and playing those, I think it's cool, and just have access to people that are free to play. Or my son wanted this card, right off the bat, because hey, I can play everything, but I only need one card, instead of having to craft a whole mess of cards. This is awesome. What is the difference between Whizbang and Zale? Zale says play with an evil deck, so I assume it's from Rise of Shadows or something. But
yeah, so it took it was either 1 or 2 of the pre-made decks from just the evil. So just the Rise of just the evil classes from Rise of Shadows. So the Warlock, Shaman, Priest, and Rogue, I think were the 4. And Armorn says it was for just the 4 decks. So yeah, just 1 deck from each of those 4 classes. So each of the ones who are in the League of Evil.
Sad. So a bit of a subpar Whizbang.
Yeah, perhaps.
I looked it up here. So Lazul's evil deck Priest, Hogwaggle's evil deck Rogue, Hagatha's evil deck Shaman, Rafam's evil deck Warlock, and Boom's evil deck Warrior.
Booms. Yeah, so it was the 5.
That makes sense.
You kind of do know sort of what you're getting into when you play Zale over Whizbang.
Oh, Whizbang's different.
Very
smaller,
different. Smaller pool, right? So I guess you could master those decks and it would be a little easier.
Well, and Zale was I don't know, it was some kind of pre-order thing or whatever, and the golden was something else too. I don't remember how I got it anymore, but it was some. Gosh, I don't remember if it was if
Like
it
a
was
BlizzCon or
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Oh, Golden Zale Shadow Cloak is obtained by purchasing all 5 chapters of the Dalaran heist. It is uncraftable and cannot be crafted or disenchanted. There we
that
go.
was it.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, so Whizbang was my final pick there. Unless you guys have any comments on Sylvanas, Deathstalker, Rexar, or Whizbang, we can see what Sheep brought to the
Yeah,
table.
that's super cool. I don't have any comments that we haven't talked about already, so I love it. Sheep, you got anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first card that I decided to spotlight for hopefully making its way into the core set, I'm going to start by being on brand because I'm always on brand. And that is Embiggen. So it should come as no surprise to anyone here that I want to see some sort of an aggro Embiggen druid deck viable in any format that I play in. It's one of my all-time favorite cards. I just love the deck. I love the archetype, and I hit legend and standard every month too. I haven't done it yet this month. I'm already in diamond, so getting there. But I'd love to play with aggro and with Embiggen in standard too. So
And
the
imagine if
thing,
you had it, you could have done it already.
right? Exactly. Exactly.
You know what? I really like this though because what I feel like they've been pushing lately is like either combo druid decks or big or like ramp druid type decks, and this is something different than that. And I want to see different. It makes a lot of sense, and that would be cool.
Yeah. Depending on how slow standard is after the core set and after rotation and whatnot, this Embiggen might end up being used more for those slow, especially like the ramp decks with Guff, right? Because you're not restricted by mana. Um, so it might end up being used more for those kind of like ramp druid, kind of like Curvestone, like it was in standard back in the day, where it was like the side quest, strength in numbers, and then they'd
God,
have
I
like
love
Winged
that deck
Guardian.
with the
Yeah,
dragons and the wing. Yeah, that deck was super fun.
it was. So of course, how I use this deck is turn your cheap minions with small stats but powerful effects into slightly less cheap minions with big stats and powerful effects. So that's how I would use Embiggen if I had a chance to use it in standard. But we'll see, if it of course is picked. I'm not thinking it will. It's not one that's probably high on their mind to bring in, but I'm hoping that they will do that thing. So for my
Hmm.
second card, though, they
This
did
next one's
mention
kind of interesting because I feel like it might go with your first card.
it very much does. So they did talk about bringing familiar faces back. And who was one of the most familiar faces? Patches the Pirate.
Arr!
So, of course, combos really nicely with Embiggen, like you were saying. But even in general, if they're trying to shift from being from hand to being, focusing more on board based, what better way to emphasize board based combat than providing strong board presence with patches where you're doing that thing. There he is. We've got the warrior quest line, which has kind of been underperforming in standard. Patches seems like a really, really, really good inclusion there. And of course, in conjunction with Embiggen is really powerful and hopefully would enable me to play aggro druid in 2 formats. So those are my selfish picks. Now, what I think is actually probably going to happen is my third pick, and that is Loatheb. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely piggybacking off of the board-based interaction and emphasis and familiar faces. Loatheb checks all the boxes, right? So Loatheb is a way to interfere with removal, further incentivizing board combat. It's fantastic stats for cost. We're still playing him, not in every deck, not nearly as ubiquitous as Loatheb was before, but it preserves your board, keeps your opponent from just dropping a big removal spell. I mean, the only thing that it would keep, it would not keep from, clearing the board is Druid if they're playing the Guff Hero card, right? So that's kind of the only exception. And I don't really know that Druid has any good AoE board clears in Standard. So I think that would probably be a good inclusion there. Could slot into a whole lot of decks. Could slot into a whole lot of just further incentivizing the priorities that they've giving us a good minion. We play him right now. All that good stuff. I'm a big fan of Loatheb.
So you remember when they did the first Hall of Fame and of course it was understood like, okay, Sylvanas and Ragnaros and whatever else, like, okay. But then they included Azure Drake, and the rationale behind choosing Azure Drake was that this card is so good that it's played in every single deck no matter what. Like, that's Loatheb. And so I'm just cracking up over here because here's my prediction, right? They put Loatheb in the core set, and then everyone puts Loatheb in every single deck no matter what. and then like 3 months later, they're like, yeah, you know what? We're going to put it back in Hall of Fame. Sorry.
So that's kind of what we thought in Standard. That's kind of what we thought with Talon Fordring at the very beginning of the core set, because she was being slotted into pretty much every deck, right? And then as more expansions and mini sets came out, she kind of fell out of the rotation, but she was a card that you could put into a lot of decks. Not a build around piece, but a really kind of Swiss Army knife that is really strong whenever there's a more limited card pool. And for us in a big card pool in Wild. But it gives players both with a more limited card collection, because it's in the core set, and with a deeper card collection, like it gives them all something to play. It gives them all something to kind of include, and no one's feeling left out because it's in the core set. So yes, Loatheb would probably be used in a ton, but I think that may be kind of why we would play it, because of the kind of Talon and Alex Straza, phenomenon that the core set saw, particularly in the first expansion of the Standard year.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think that's a good point, because like you said, at the very beginning, cards like Alex Lifebender, is that right? Was in like everything. And then it, kind of dropped back a little bit. And same thing with Talon Fordring and a couple others. And I could see that, where everyone uses it at first, and then as decks get more refined, like, okay, maybe it eases back a little bit. So interesting. I like it. Well, let's move on real quick. Hey, I wouldn't normally say this on the show, but hey, massive raid. Hey, thank you, Corb. Thank you so much. We got a lot of people joining us, so welcome to the podcast. We're right in the middle of the show, so I'll probably edit this part out. But thank you so much. We appreciate that very much. And so we're talking about the core set rotation tonight, and actually really good timing here, because the second part of this conversation is what are some current Wild decks that we would like to see evolve based on getting new cards in the core set? And so really, I guess what this means is like, what are current decks in Wild that are seeing play but aren't quite there yet, like aren't quite good enough, where if we could get a couple of new cards maybe to support that archetype, and that they would be better. And so I only have a couple. My first choice would be Beast Druid, where I think like, Aggro Druid has always been around, but Beast Druid has been something new over the last month or so. And it's, it's a variation of Aggro Druid, but I love that we're seeing cards played for the first time in years, where you get some of the new cards, right? So Oracle of Elune, Frostsaber Matriarch, these are from these newer sets, and then you get older cards. So Narrowbar Weblord, like we talked about earlier from Nax, and then Night of the Wild was from TGT. And like nobody's ever played Night of the Wild because it just was never good enough. And now we're finally finding a way to, for it to see play. And the deck is great. I mean, like Blue Train hit Legend with it and some other people. But I would love for it to get even maybe a little bit more support, because we're still using some of the token or like aggro synergy cards to buff these up rather than like beast synergy. So that'd be kind of fun. Even if we got one or two more beasts to kind of like synchronize with it, I think would be really cool. And then the other one that I really, really would love to see get some support would be like Ping Mage or Hero Power Mage or whatever you want to call it, because the deck is just fun. I feel like I love it and I want it to work, but it's just not quite there yet for Wild. And I've seen different versions of it over the past couple of weeks. I've seen a couple different people hit Legend with it, and different variations, but it's like the definition of off meta, right? And there's some cards there that different people use in different versions. But there's also some super fun cards: Jan'alai the Dragonhawk, Frost Giant, and some other ones that I think would be really fun if this deck got a little bit more support, just because it's not quite there yet. And then I was thinking about other ones, and I just like, I don't know. Yeah, unnerving Demon Hunter would make the class playable again. That would be kind of fun.
Yes.
Because it's just not playable in Wild at all. I mean, I say that a little facetiously, but like by and large, it's not very good. I thought about like Freeze Shaman, but like it's already great. Yeah, whether it's tier 1 or tier 2 is arguable, but like it's basically tech card heaven, and like does it really need more tech cards? Like no. Realistically, no. And I'm not ready for Questline Hunter to get better quite yet. Like it was so like everywhere for such a long time, and now it's kind of coming back in like different variations. And like it's good, but it's not quite there. I love the Dragon's Bane inclusion. I think that's really fun. But like I'm not ready for that deck to get a whole bunch more support. And honestly, I'm really tired of Warlock being like the OP broken class all the time. And so like I don't really want that there either. And I know we probably will get it anyways, but there's probably going to be some new pirate with charge that will, but like I
Unnerf patches.
I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with that. But like I think, when we saw Defias Cannoneer and Mr. Smite, I remember I was looking back. So this past week, I was cleaning up my Google Drive and deleted my spreadsheet with the legend runs on it. Fortunately, I had taken a screenshot, and so I recreated it and added the missing data. And when I was looking for it, I saw the tweet like the day that the Dreadmines came out. I crafted Mr. Smite and Defias Cannoneer in gold and like sailed to Legend with that deck. And I was like, hey, you know what? There we go. And like there will always be Pirate Warrior. It's been around forever and ever and ever. It's not going anywhere. It got nerfed recently, but it's still...
Guess what? It's still here.
It's still here. And like, I didn't want to include that. I don't want it to get any better. I mean... Yeah.
No.
So anyway, those are my picks. Like I couldn't come up with a third one really. And I don't know. What I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's others. But I mean the other piece, I would always love to see support for archetypes that we just have never seen before. Like it's so rare that there's a new deck typically. And we're starting to see that now, but I mean, geez, maybe Dragon Priest or something like that, right? That we haven't seen play in years and years and years. So
I missed that.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
Anyways, yeah, that's me. So that's my choice. I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole. I want to give time for Hydra and Sheep, and then we've got a super awesome listener series finale to cast tonight. So Hydra, what are your picks on this topic?
So my picks could bring back some bad memories if you rewind a few years in the past. And you were a standard player, and they released these cards named Gen and Baku.
Oh, are you really going here?
I am. So these cards were so annoying, and they made Standard so linear. You knew you were hitting the button. You were making one dude or two dudes. It was everywhere. We had the battle of what is better, even Paladin or odd Paladin. Even Paladin was better. It got nerfed, and odd Paladin came to the rise. And it was gross. It was so gross that for the first time, Hearthstone exiled cards early. They did not make it to rotation. They left, and all of their little friends had to go too. And it was bad. And then so Standard was saved, right? But Wild, we still had it. And they weren't as oppressive, right? There is a lot of good ones that we, like Odd Paladin remained good. Even Paladin wasn't so good, but we had, even Warlock. Odd Demon Hunter was the only playable Demon Hunter, basically, for a while. Odd Rogue was one of my all-time favorite decks.
Yeah.
I cannot remember the last time I've seen an Odd Rogue, even though sometimes it'll make it on the Tempo Storm list somehow because someone's doing well with it. But I feel like there's some classes that never actually got Gen and Baku love, and that is what I would like to look for in any additions in the core set.
They'd have to fix Demon Hunter.
Yeah, I would love to see an even Demon Hunter actually work.
Yeah, they might have to do something about that one. But so while like Odd Rogue, I would love Odd Rogue support because it's mid-rangey. I've always loved that type of play. Either go fast or die in Hearthstone kind of. So, mid-range sort of fell by the wayside, but I would really like to see either support for that or for the decks that we never did get to see, right? Like, yeah, we saw Odd Warrior, tank up. I versed many bots on Asia playing Odd Warrior, but like Druid never got a lot of decks, Priest never got a lot of decks. We never got to explore, trust me, there's been some side ones, right?
Sure, but
been very, very off meta, but nothing that was really playable as like a tier 1 or 2 deck, right? So I really think, and Odd Shaman was killed by the fact that you can't pick the
Wrath of Air Totem.
Wrath of Air Totem, right? So
that would be really interesting with a smaller pool of cards. Now that you mention it, it's one thing in Wild because you've got everything, but with a smaller pool of cards in Standard, that would be really interesting.
Oh, I'm not. Oh,
I honestly,
no.
I think it's a long shot. I ain't gonna lie, but the concept of it is it's intriguing.
This is more along the lines of I'd like to see the support in Wild from new. Core set cards.
No. Okay. No. That's I like that. And every
Standard, they would lose their minds.
They would riot. Yeah. No.
Yes.
You're right.
No. This is support in Wild for Odd and Even.
I like that. Well,
from the core set.
And like you mentioned, they kind of killed Odd Shaman. They kind of killed Odd Paladin for that matter with some of the nerves. And then you've got decks that just didn't see a lot of play, Priest and Druid, and I don't know. Recently,
Hunter obviously
they come back every once in a while, right? Like Hunter's coming back a little bit, or like I saw Get Meowth posted the other day, an even Shaman with some evolve stuff in it that he was doing really well with, and it's really fun to see these come back every once in a while, but it's been long enough that we haven't really they haven't seen a lot of play, and that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, the Odd Hunter's been the only one recently that's been oppressive, basically.
Yeah, but then it got killed too.
and it got killed. So that's why I'd like to see support for the other classes, right? Because a lot of them didn't see the light of day, and I mean, Wild has such a large card pool that we got to be missing something, right? There's probably already something decent, but some support. There's going to be a card where a light bulb goes off, and suddenly, for some reason, we're playing Even Priest. I don't know, right? Like, there could be something. So that's what I'd like to see, because these are already existing archetypes. They're not good, right? Like the ones that I'm talking about, like not good ones. You never know. A card or two here and there. Like Hunter was dead. Hunter was dead in Wild, basically. They've released one card and it took over the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
oppressive.
and so they could release just a couple cards and there could be a whole bunch of different archetypes because we already have this odd and even. So I would like to see
straight up like buff Gloomstag, and then all of a sudden,
Right?
something like an
right?
odd druid could become like a real thing. There's already an odd druid support card. It just doesn't have an effect that's worthwhile. So
Yeah. No one, and I saw. I mean, they're off meta stuff. I mean, I saw an odd quest line druid, and I see that they're talking about it in chat. But like I've seen it too, because the hero power does more damage, but also gives you more armor, and you tick off the quest quicker. And it's like against all the aggro decks, it was doing well for a minute there. I mean, super off meta, but at the same time, like there's some stuff, but it was just severely underplayed. It'd be fun. Yeah. I'd be okay with that, actually. I like that suggestion. All right, Sheep, what about you? You got a couple here.
Yeah, so of course, I'm going to start by continuing to be on brand and say aggro druid, because of course I am. So it's honestly kind of in a decent spot right now. Like, of course, I'm not talking about the beast druid. Like beast druid and aggro druid are very different things.
They're different,
right?
Yeah.
So aggro druid is kind of in a decent spot, but a large chunk of the wild meta is kind of unfavorable towards it. And aggro druid being aggro druid, it can high roll into a win against bad matchups if you know how to navigate them correctly. But what I would love to see is some support for the archetype. To get either cheap buff spells or cards. So something kind of like Claw Fury Adept that came out recently is a good example of some sort of buff, right?
Yeah.
But more than just that, I would really like to see something that is a choose one card, hopefully a buff, So right now, at the very least, in the build that I've been tinkering with, honestly, I think the one that I've got is probably this meta's this is my favorite aggro druid in particular. The weak link is Sow the Soil. And I think that if we had something that was still proactive and whatnot like that, then that could, replace that and actually make the archetype go from solid but off meta to actually meta, which would be pretty cool. And then, of course, more minions like those introduced recently. I already mentioned Claw Fury Adept, but Jerry Rig Carpenter, it's a pirate. Yes, its stats for cost aren't great. But, you throw one and biggin on there and all of a sudden it is. And then, of course, the power of the card is really the effect, drawing a choose one card and then splitting it. So, support in any of those ways, I think could really make that from being off meta to actually being meta. May only be tier, 3 or, low 2, but still kind of being from off meta and not really talked about in the conversation to being talked about, which would be pretty cool. So that's the first one I'd really like to see some support for.
And Sheep, you could say, I was playing it before it was cool.
That's true. I definitely could. So the second deck that I would really like to see support for, and another one of my favorite archetypes, is Mech Paladin. So the very first time I hit Legend was with the homebrew Mech Paladin list that we've actually discussed that on the show. though it's been a long while since then. So I'd love to see some powerful mechs go, either through the core set or the first expansion to kind of revive that archetype. So right now, I feel like it's still kind of strong, but it's right now you'd rather play hand buff because it just does those same things, just better, right? So
I got dunked on this legend climb over the past couple of days. I got dunked on twice by the same dude playing Mech Paladin, and I was not expecting it at all. I saved the replays.
Wow.
And I posted them in the Discord because I was able to capture the whole deck. And like, all I gotta do is stick one mech, especially if it's the one with
Flying Machine,
Wind Fury, yeah.
Flying Machine,
and like, and then you just reduce the cost. Magnetic, hit you in the face for 28. Like, what just happened?
They could have put a Ziliax on it and heal up too. What?
And so, you know what? Like, I hadn't seen the deck in a year or whatever it's been, and I wasn't expecting it. And then it's like you have to clear every turn. It's like Inner Fire Priest, right? You have to clear every turn, or they're gonna kill you.
right?
And sometimes they're gonna kill you anyways. And so, I love it when old decks come back with a couple of new cards to make them like new and fresh and fun. That feels like a good one to me. I like that.
I think that they're kind of just a couple of really small cards that a brand new X, Y, or Z, and I'll go into those, could actually push and revive that archetype. So some of the ways that could be achieved are perhaps with a cheap mech with a powerful effect and high health, because that way you can preserve it on board and then magnetize onto it, kind of like you were talking about in the games that you were playing, Nate, right? So right now there's the 2-mana 1/5 that is a mech, and that's all it is. It's just a big dumb body. That's not really doing a whole lot, right? Mm-hmm. So something besides just 2-mana 1/5 mech, something like perhaps stealth or something like that to actually make it worthwhile to throw on there.
Scared me as soon as you said
stealth. In that case, it'd probably only be a 1/3 or something like that. But I mean, still, if it's stealth, crazy things could happen.
Yes.
Another way that it could kind of achieve that is, there's the Kangor's Endless Army right now. But that's a 7-mana card.
I never saw much play either. Yeah.
No. So what if there was a cheaper version of it? Or something that, you discover a mech that you had around earlier. You would need a lot of support to actually incentivize something like that to make its way into standard. So probably not going to happen. But that's one way that it could be revitalized for our format. So something kind of like that to incentivize us running mechs instead of the current hand buff archetype, I think would be cool, because the current hand buff archetype is just strictly better, right? Mm-hmm. It's just strictly more competitive. But Mech Paladin can do Mech Paladin things.
Yeah.
So finally, and this one is definitely much more off meta, and another one of those labor of love decks that I have, but it's not nearly as competitive as Aggro Druid. And that is Spiteful Summoner / Big Spell Mage.
Yeah.
Super spicy. But it's honestly almost there. And I think that this one might honestly have the best shot at actually getting some support. Viable? Probably not, but some support.
Yeah.
So here's kind of why. So we've seen kind of some light touches to this in previous sets this past year. So with Belinda and some of the high cost spells that were rolled out. But what is it kind of missing right now? And that is the minions to actually support getting into that late game. What were we talking about earlier? Oh, the board-based strategies and making the board-based combat actually be what they're incentivizing and what they're pushing this coming expansion this coming year, right?
I actually really like that too, because Belinda was one of our diamond legendaries, right? And well, we did our lore episode, and while I understand there's a lore impact for the character of Belinda, but like the card has been severely underplayed in standard and like just absolutely neglected in wild, because it's just not. I mean, the only time I played it was in like our listener series in like an all Yogg deck, and it was just Clown Fiesta, and ended up like getting pooed on by Yogg, and yeah, Yogg cast living mana, and then revolve, and all my mana disappeared. It was like the most Yogg has ever done. With the exception of turning something into it. Like, I guess the most Yogg thing is like when Yogg turned himself into a frog. Is like that's classic Yogg, right? But like I was like, oh
Yogg.
yeah. What is it? Yogg giveth and Yogg taketh away. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hijack the conversation. But I agree. I think Belinda has been severely underplayed. Spiteful Summoner's always been super cool, and I could see them pushing that a little bit in standard. Like, it was interesting. Cora made a comment a couple weeks back-ish, something to the effect, people were complaining about the mini set cards, and she said something to the effect of, hey, keep in mind that we're building the mini set with the next expansion in mind, and that's where this ties in. Like, why would you create a card, and we've seen it in the past, right? They make a card and they were hoping that it would see more play, and it doesn't see any play, and so they either make cards to synergize with it, or they buff it slightly, or something. We've seen that go sideways on them. Or like, oops, we buffed that too much. Revert. But I could see that, and I liked that. It was fun. I remember playing a whole mess of Spiteful Druid way back when, and Spiteful Mage is always fun. I mean,
Yeah, so the way that I've been playing around with it right now, and again, this is not a competitive deck. This is a spicy deck. Is all the minions kind of in the early game are the hero power synergy, right? So it's basically Ping Mage and Ping Mage support,
right?
But with Belinda, Spiteful Summoner, and some big spells kind of thrown in. Obviously you're not running wildfires in that deck, because that would have anti-synergy with play Belinda here. Your wildfire now costs 5. Oops.
Yeah, or you get a Spiteful Summoner that summons a 1/1. Be pretty great too. Yeah. So hey, summon a Patches.
So you cut Wildfire, but has a ton of other hero power support minions, like the Spirit, and just a ton. There were actually a few of those minions coming in the past expansion, or the expansion before. So there's the kind of hero power aspect to it, but if they were to continue to push just minions, you could even run some of the hero power ish minions just as part of being strong minions, and without like the whole archetype that's not the Spiteful Summoner Belinda package, just being strong minions to get there. So that is kind of different archetypes that I'd like to see. And while I think that's the big spell / Spiteful Summoner like deck is probably going to still be the least competitive out of them all after all these are introduced, I do think it probably will get the most support, just kind of by virtue of not having a lot of viability right now, honestly.
I like that though. It's always fun when we get to play some new stuff, and I don't know, there are decks that will always be around, and then there's new stuff, and so it's been super fun, especially lately, having some new toys to play with or new decks to try out. That there's always Pirate Warrior to go back to, when you need something to play that you don't have to think too hard about, or your comfortable favorite I find myself like I always go back to Free Shaman or Reno Priest or any sort of Warlock anything, you know, Hydra and Rogue stuff and Sheep and Aggro Druid of course, and but when we see brand new decks or decks that we get to dust off and try out some new cards in them, like it's super fun. So I'm excited for this.
Sad. I miss Rogue. I feel like I haven't played Rogue in forever.
Hey, I spent some time last weekend learning to play Pillager Rogue, kind of poorly, but I did okay. It's fun. There's some Rogue stuff. Quest Rogue's still like pretty great at the moment. So
I've dabbled.
All right. Well, hey, that's kind of it for the big topic of this week's show. But there's still some stuff to round out the end of the show before we get to our match here. So unless there's any final thoughts, I'd like to transition to Sheep to talk about our listener series tonight.
Definitely. So, like Nate mentioned at the top of the show, we are in the finals of our listener series this week. So, for those of you who may not be familiar with the listener series, the Born to Be Wild listener series is a free Wild Hearthstone tournament series with custom deck building restrictions each week. The regular season itself lasts 5 weeks, followed by 3 weeks of playoffs, and we are in the finals tonight. So, the next season of the listener series will come about shortly after the new expansion. So stay tuned for more information about that. We will have an announcement and whatnot once we have dates for those things. But for this season, like I said, we are in the finals. So the finals themselves are broken down into 2 weeks, ban week and match week. So, why is there a ban week? So, the final challenge is Battle of the Bands.
This is a crazy challenge. Like so there's a lot of people maybe watching that are newer to this, and like typically there's a new challenge each week, but this one is crazy to the point where we had to split it up over 2 weeks. But like, this is the penultimate challenge. Like this is incredible. Sorry, carry on. I'm so excited about it though.
Definitely. So the challenge itself is that the players create the challenge for each other. And that is achieved by each player submitting bans for their opponents. So 10 cards per class are banned and 15 neutral cards. So the season long ban, so we've banned like Gin and Baku and Ice Block, stuff like that. Those are no longer just stock banned. So if a player wants their opponent to not play Gin or Baku, those have to be 2 of their neutral bans, right? As well as 10 cards. So 10 cards total from each class, 15 neutral cards, all banned. So they are creating the ban for the other player. They are creating the ban. It's Build-A-Ban is one name for it. We also toyed around with the name Build-A-Ban Workshop.
I love it. And the other piece, just for people who may not be familiar, is that the way that this week and every other week works is that these submissions are hidden from each opponent until they're both submitted. And so it's not like they could see what each other are working on. This is an independent, like, all right, you come up with your ban list, you submit it, and they're not revealed until both players have submitted. And so it's not like you can bounce, there's no cheating, I guess is what I'm saying. And so, yeah, over the last week, they submitted their bans. And now over this week, they've had to then create their decks based on the ban. So any card that their opponent banned, they cannot use in deck building. And so when you watch this match coming up, you'll be like, oh, why did they not include that card? Well, it's because their opponent banned it. And so, this is tricky. This is like the challenge of challenges. And so
I love this challenge. It's very genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a final challenge, but it's we may very well be doing this as the final challenge, just in general, because it is perfect. So, of course, like Nate mentioned, if you're watching live, stay tuned because you will catch the finals between Jules and Kinray right after the show. If you are watching or listening to this on the replay, hey, hop over to YouTube. Nate posts the videos of the casted matches to YouTube at the same time that the podcast episode itself goes live. So check it out there. You can, of course, find them on YouTube under the Listeners Series playlist on Born to Be Wild's channel. So, of course, as always, for additional information, please check out our website at www.borntobewildhs.com.
Hooray.
So stay tuned for our listener series. But Hydra, I believe that we also have had a listener challenge.
Yes, one final thing.
Tell me more about that.
So each week we have a listener challenge where we basically give some conditions. You meet the condition. We decide, who wins. And so last week's challenge was best suggestion for a listener series challenge. So what Sheep was just talking about before. So a lot of the time we come up with the ideas either ourselves or we ask the listeners what would be great to put into our listener series. So we asked, hey, what would be something really cool that we could put into the listener series? Now, I'm going to say that just because you are chosen doesn't mean it's actually going to be in, because we have chosen something that is completely outlandish.
But this one was so unique. I have to say, big shout out to everybody who submitted challenge ideas, because we got some really great ones. But the winner here is the idea is so crazy that it makes me want to do it. Actually, I almost want to do a tournament or a match with this restriction, just because it's so outside the box. I don't even. Well,
I'll explain it, and then you'll see or hear how crazy it really is. So, this challenge was won by and submitted by Naya, by the way. So congratulations, Naya. Now, there are 5 major conditions to this. So I'll start off with condition number 1. There is no actual deck building restriction as long as it's a wild legal deck. Okay? So
wait a minute. What kind of challenge is that? That's too easy.
I know. You can do whatever you want, right? You can play whatever deck, tier 1. That's fine. Now, condition 2. Each match that you play must be presided by an arbiter, which means someone has to be watching and officiating your match. Okay? Now, this is because of the next rule, Rule 3. This is an emote-based challenge. Now, on
That's incredible.
Right?
Sorry.
So no, you can't do that.
On each play.
Really? Wow.
That's what you're going to hear as you're playing your matches. So on each player's turn, you can emote once on your turn, and if you choose to emote on your turn, there is going to be a restriction on your opponent's next turn based on the emote that you chose to use. So you are now restricting what your opponent can do on their next turn based on what you decided to do. So this is putting
incredible.
a whole other level, many levels basically, on the gameplay, and everyone's gonna rope because. So basically, for example, if you say thanks on your own turn, on your opponent's turn, they are not allowed to attack with their hero. All right. If you select well played, the opponent cannot attack with their minions on their next turn. If you say greetings, the opponent cannot play minions on their next turn. Right? So this gets deep. If you say, wow, really? Wow.
Wow. Really? Wow.
Your opponent cannot activate hero powers on their next turn, except if they're passive, because you can't help that.
Yeah.
Oops is opponent cannot play spells on their next turn. Threaten is opponent cannot play. Does this say cannot play cards? You cannot play cards if you threaten.
Weapon cards.
Oh, sorry, weapon cards. My bad. I'm like, any cards? I'm just going to keep hitting that button. And last but not least, the rest in peace, sorry button, which you're only going to get if Mayor Noggenfogger is on the board. Your opponent cannot emote next turn. So this is like this is wild.
This is so big brain, like, especially now that there's like 100 different like character portraits and they all have different sound emotes. Like, how do you even know which one is
Oh, I didn't even think about that because
I mean, I don't even know what that one is from, is that like
that's wow.
well, like, there you go. I'd be so confused. But we might have to restrict it to like, vanilla heroes only or something like that.
It would have to be, because you don't understand what the new ones are saying.
Yeah. But anyways, like, the idea was so creative that it was like, you know what? This is so crazy that it might work. I would love to watch this. Like, it's so big brain that
maybe one time we could have just a mini tournament. See if anyone wants to sign up, and we can even cast it.
Right? That'd be. We'd have to have like like an answer key up on the screen to indicate what each means, because otherwise, this is crazy.
I feel like there'll be a lot of roping, because
you'd have to.
Like, what can't I do? First of all, when it's your turn, you can't. There's something you're not allowed to do, and then you have to now erase that. What can I do? And then now you have to pick which emote you want to do to prevent your opponent to do what they will have to do on the next turn. So there's 3 things you need to do every turn.
We could just throw Nosdormu in there as well to kick things up.
Oh my gosh.
Oh dear. Anyways, this is great. So Naya, I think I'm mispronouncing that, but I love the challenge. It's so it's like so different from anything that we've ever received that I personally like absolutely love it. So we had some discussion around this, and this is clearly the winner for this week's challenge. So you get 2 packs on us. I'll reach out via the Discord, and we can get you a couple of packs.
But yes, disclaimer that we're not going to put that in next season's listener series. It would be way too crazy.
No, we can't do that.
So if you may have noticed, we've got a soundboard going now. We got some sound drops, some sound bites that we've added to the show, and so we've only got a handful that we've added so far, and so we're just some quality of life improvements and whatnot. And so I thought it would be pretty cool that for next week's challenge, see how many submissions we could get for just basically the funniest sound drops that are in Hearthstone. And what you can do is you can submit these into the weekly challenges channel, either the link to it, or just you can even type the quote and we'll find it, because we have access to it's the Hearth SFX website, and it has all the sound drops. So what we want is just the funniest ones that we could add, or the most useful ones that we never thought of, that could go in a transition, or just something that's outright hilarious. So yeah, you can submit those in the Discord in the weekly challenges channel, and we'll announce the winner on next week's show. And the winner will receive 2 Hearthstone packs on us and be immortalized in the Hall of Fame on the Born to Be Wild website. I'm looking forward to this one. I encourage as many people to participate as possible, because I'd love just to see, there's cards, we've discussed this, that we don't play, that haven't seen play for a long time. Mm-hmm. And there may be some gems in there that we've forgotten about.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So show us the diamond in the rough.
yes, show us the diamond for sure. That would be great. So I challenge all of you out there listening to give us the best that you can think of.
That was wild.
There you go.
The wilds thank you.
There's some good ones. I'm just saying.
There is.
Hold on to your mug. We're in for a wild night.
Can you see? I looked. I looked for all the ones that said wild. They're so good. There's some good ones.
I am
Yeah.
a caretaker of the wild.
There you go. All right. Hey, I cannot wait to see what people come up with. Really looking forward to, getting silly and doing some fun things with the show. It's always good. The sound effects they let us be 12 years old again, and it's super entertaining, and this is how we stay young. So, yeah, you can type it out, you can link it, you can whatever. We just want to know what it is so that we can add it to the show. Maybe we make some bumpers or whatever we do with them, but it'd be an absolute blast. All right, everybody. Well, that is it for this week's show. That is a wrap. For more wild content or to see where that you can find us and interact with us individually, again, please visit us online at borntobewildhs.com or check us out on Discord. Link is on the website. Link is in chat here. And we love interacting with everybody. And again, please stay tuned for the casted match of the finals in Season 4 of the Born to Be Wild Listener Series. Cannot wait. We're in for an epic match. And for you audio listeners listening to this later, please check it out on YouTube. It'll be up by the time this podcast is posted to podcast apps. So, yeah. All right. And next week, we will be discussing the announcement of, whatever is released next week about upcoming changes to rotation and core set and new expansion, whatever other crazy things are in store for us. So thank you, everybody, for being here. And we will see you next week on another new episode of Born to Be Wild. Hooray!
Hooray!
Job's done.
Bah.
I feel icky.
I'll miss you.
Delightful.
That has to be the last one.
Right? It really does.